Hi, I'm James Wooldridge. I'm the librarian at Victoria College, and I've been asked to tell you about Devil's Hole. So here goes. Jersey has many strange place names, but none, I think, quite as strange as the one I've been asked to tell you about, Devil's Hole. The 200-foot crater in St Mary has many legends and lore attached to it, but the main legend, the story of Devil's Hole, involves a crooked miser. Once upon a time, there was, in St Mary, a miser. He was covetous, grasping, scheming, and one thing he really loved was money. The one thing he really hated was the church. Now, in those days, there was a tax called the tithe. This was a church tax whereby 10% of your earnings would go to the church. Now, the miser obviously wasn't very happy about this, and he got even less happy when he found out that the tithes money was going to be used to put bells into the church. The bells were duly fixed in the church and rung out constantly. This drove the miser mad. In his madness, he rushed out of his house, down the country lanes, and found himself on the north coast. Still in his head, he could hear these bells, on and on and on. In his madness, he called out to the devil for help, and with a crack in the earth and a great rumble, the earth opened up and allowed him to jump into it, straight into hell. The devil had answered his prayers and left us, in the meantime, with a large crater, which we call the Devil's Hole. That's the legend of it, anyway. The reality is somewhat different. Originally, the area is called the Creux de Vie, which means the spiral hollow. It was a cave way back, and the top of the cave collapsed in. So there's a cave going into a large hollow. Now, it was called Creux de Vie, so it's possible over time that de Vie became misheard as devil. Or the other possibility is there was an old Jersey saying called the Vieux Vie, which was a Jersey nickname for the devil. So it could be misheard as the Creux de Vie, V with an S. High tide and the flooding of the cave have always caused a bellowing and a rumbling to come from the Devil's Hole, and this also gave it a strange, spooky nature. But the devil himself, and that story I just told you, come from the 19th century. In 1851, there was a shipwreck just off the Devil's Hole, a shipwreck called the Josephine. One man died, 4 others managed to cling to the rocks around the Devil's Hole. They were saved by the owner of the inn there, the Priory, who got a medal for it, and he was called Nicholas Arthur. However, the other thing that came from the ship when it was wrecked was the figurehead. Allegedly it washed into the Devil's Hole, and one enterprising local man called John Gifford from St Peter's Valley took the figurehead, added some arms, added some legs, and most importantly, some horns, and it became the devil. That was put back into the hollow. So the statue of the devil in the Devil's Hole. So that was put back into the hollow. So the statue of the devil in the Devil's Hole. The area became a must-see for local tourists in the late 19th century, men and women walking right down into the hole itself. Like Plymouth, they seemed to like going down to caves. At the beginning of the walk, there was the Priory Inn and the pavilion. The pavilion at Devil's Hole served ices and teas, and the Priory, if you wanted something stronger, was a pub, as it still is. Despite the name and the situation of where it is, the Priory has actually no documented religious history at all. So, this statue, going back to the devil, stood there for about 100 years. There's many postcards of it. It was called His Satanic Majesty, and it stayed there until 1951. In 1951, some pranksters stole it, and it ended up being delivered to the JP officers. Eventually, it went back to Devil's Hole. 6 years later, again, it was stolen. This time, it was burnt. So, that was the end of the first devil of Devil's Hole. Since then, it's been replaced twice. The current devil, who is at the beginning of the walk, not in the hole where the original ones used to be, is basically, I think it's 15 foot tall. And a copy of the current one, called Derek, sold last year to raise money for charity. So, you've still got a devil in Devil's Hole, but whether it's a story about a shipwreck, an enterprising landlord, or a meeting with the Prince of Darkness himself, one thing is for sure. It certainly is one hell of a tale.